Good evening slash morning, everyone joining us from both sides of the planet. My name is Seth. I'm VP of Operations at TimeZest. Today's session, your client experience, looking at experience through the client's perspective, is designed to turn the camera around. Instead of viewing service delivery through our internal dashboards and ticket queues, we're going to step into our client's shoes and see what they see, feel what they feel, and most importantly, find out where we can make their journey faster, friendlier, and more future-proof. We're thrilled to be joined by a true industry trailblazer to help you rethink what client experience really means in today's technology services world. It's my pleasure to introduce James Davis, Chief Strategy Officer and founder of the TSP Advisory. James has been at the forefront of guiding MSPs, or what he calls technology solution partners, across the APAC region, offering advisory-led services, fractional CSO engagements, and insights that help shift MSPs from a tech-first mindset to a business-first mindset. Through his decades of experience, ranging from launching the Pax8 Academy in the APAC region to founding one of the region's earliest MSP coaching practices, James always brings a wealth of actionable strategies. He's a vocal advocate for modernizing service packaging, building transparent solutions and instead of rigid stacks, and truly stepping into the advisor role with your clients. Today, James will guide us through fresh ways to elevate MSP client relationships by focusing on empathy, shifting perspective, embracing modern service models, and building lasting loyalty. On a personal note, I've known James for about 5 years now, and I found him to be a real it-getter in all of my conversations with him. He talks about realistic, actionable stuff you can actually take back to your business. Very much what we're about here at TimeZest. So I'm excited to have him on today. To start, to kind of set the scene, to get us thinking about, this client experience. Imagine you're the client. Your production server just sneezed. It's 7 p.m. and you need help now. The next few minutes will decide whether you rave about your MSP to other people or just start shopping for a new one. There's just as much opportunity as peril in that moment. And that's exactly why we're here today and what we want to kind of pick James' brain about. Welcome, James. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Seth. This was probably the most comprehensive intro I've ever gotten. I think you've sold me better than I could ever sell myself.
I stayed out of your childhood. We didn't talk about that embarrassing thing you did in college, so we went light.
There's a lot of embarrassments through my life. That's why I like to help businesses, and especially the owners, get better outcomes. I've lived it myself, and I love this industry, and I'm really on a mission to elevate, and that's why we wanted to come together today to talk to the partners around client experience. It's something that's vital to our businesses, but I think it's something that we've really lost sight of. And I'm going to dive in today, and we're going to cover quite a few areas. But there's one sort of key message that I want everyone to think about throughout the information overload that you're probably going to get is who are you? Who do you serve? There's no single right answer, and that's been probably the most frustrating thing I've been trying to fight against in our industry for the last couple of years. Is there isn't one true model. What matters is who your clients are and what you can do to help them in their business. And so as we dive in, and just to get everyone thinking and set the scene, is we measure ourselves by CSAT. That's a key. It's a key outcome that most people drive by in their service departments. But what we keep forgetting is CSAT's a very transactional measure. We're a relationship business. Our relationships and the overall value we give a client over the long term is far more important than whether we service one ticket well or not. We've all done very poorly in service before. We've all gone on that roller coaster where clients are all happy with us, service has fallen apart, then they're not, then we get back on track. It's very rare that those transactional things actually matter from a client engagement perspective. And that's what we keep getting sucked into. And what I want to start with is why? Why have we ended up like this? Where have we come from? And let's reminisce, Seth. You just mentioned around like the server falling over. Most clients don't have servers anymore. But where we started was a very simple beginnings, very complex technology, and very poor technology that would fall over from a light breeze. Someone would sneeze and the network would fall over. And that's where we cut our teeth. When everyone started, we were probably only a handful of technologists in a regional area that could solve any small business technology problem. And that's where we started to build these responsibilities. Like you said, a server would fall over. How fast could we respond, and how could we get something? Something would break. And then we were the white knight. We would work out how to fix that. And then it was working again. Everyone was happy because that was where we were, say, 15, 20 years ago, because there was no standardization. Environments were all hodgepodge. The technology wasn't great. Everyone remembers SBS server fondly, but that's rose-tinted glasses. How many things would go wrong in that beast of a small business server? There was constant issues, but that's where we developed our value. That's where we cut our teeth. That's where clients could build trust with us because they had an issue. We were Johnny on the spot to solve it. But things changed over time. We realized maybe reactive break fix wasn't the right answer. We started to develop that whole MSP concept generally 15, 20 years ago. There weren't that many MSPs. It was around as a concept, but it didn't really start taking off till about the 2010s. And so we started to develop that proactive mindset. We realized maybe if we patch those things, maybe if we set some stuff up in a standardized way, all of a sudden the client wouldn't have as much issues, but we're still very much break fix at heart. Our early days, our founding days of a business, we built our core value pillars around how fast we could respond. The fact that we were local, we could jump in the car. If that server went off at 7 p.m., we couldn't do anything remotely. We could jump in the car and we could get there in 10, 20 minutes. And we realized that if we started to push standardized stacks, that we could solve a lot of problems because we could just give clients well-proven technology that we know we could support and that would work. We reduced a lot of issues that way. And that's been our founding thing. I want you to reflect on that for a bit because that value is what we started to drive through the expectations of our clients. Our clients felt that we needed that. And so as we started to transition into this, we started to create that value prop and we started to build recurring services. We realized, hey, this charge by the hour thing is too much of a roller coaster. It was very hard for our clients to budget for. We couldn't really fit in good proactive maintenance that way with our tools and price it up. So we realized let's create some different offerings. Let's create our recurring services. But there's a thing that we made a mistake of when we started to build these. We didn't price them up correctly in the first place. Most of us, if you think back to those days, most of us just worked out what's the average spend of a client. Let's put 20% contingency on and she'll be right. And it's not, and I'll tell you why soon, but also we were basing it all on our support. It was all based on that reactive support, and we thought we could solve that problem. We sold it because we weren't fully across the value props and understanding how it all operates and how it should operate. We sold it basically to our client of, we'll set you a fixed price so you don't have to worry about our spend creep, and we'll just take care of the whole environment. You'll never have to worry again. But as we're finding in more recent times, that value prop is very hard to shift because we've set a big expectation with our clients that we've got everything covered. But as you'll find out through this presentation, we don't have everything covered and we're having to backtrack really quickly. But most partners aren't reshaping that expectation with clients. We're still trying to dance around that because we've embedded it for so long. And what I want you to reflect on is those expectations are affecting us in quite a lot of negative ways. And especially as the industry has become very cookie cutter and commoditized, everyone does the same thing with basically the same tools. That pricing methodology that we used has affected margins quite significantly. We've never changed our thought process from being a break fix shop and becoming a true MSP with a lot more automation, a lot more proactivity, a lot more proper management of IT. And so we're sort of stuck where we are. And what we've tried to do in the past to change some stuff is default to how do we interact with clients? You think about our value prop. When we first started, everything was done by phone. Our server would fall over at night. Someone had to ring us. We would worry about how we respond and we'd answer the phone. We realized that was quite inefficient. So we started to drive everyone to send in an email unless something's urgent and give me a call. And then in more sort of recent times, probably the last sort of 5-6 years, we thought, oh, let's adopt a client portal and push everyone through that because all of a sudden we can make our intake of tickets a lot easier because we can create a form and people fill out their details a lot better because what they're sending through via email is rubbish and we need to call the client and get more information anyway. But we've taken that approach based on what's good for us, what makes us more efficient in terms of getting information. We haven't thought about why the client needs to contact us. We haven't thought about what value they're getting through the touch points. And we haven't thought about what's the best for the client need. And I'll talk a lot more about that in a minute. But what's overall happening is all our past mistakes are driving quite poor profitability because we're not efficient in what we do. And we're trapped between basically a scalable model and a white glove service where we've got one foot in each camp. So we're overserving our clients hugely for low prices, but we're not scalable to have enough volume coming through that we can run on generate margin dollars of low percentage margins. And that's what keeping us trapped alongside those expectations that we've set. And so a lot of partners are just feeling super trapped, super lost, and they're not thinking about the future. And what's happening is we're starting to see churn, we're starting to see even more pricing pressure, and we're seeing a lot of shrinkage in a lot of MSPs. So what we've got isn't quite working. And before I go into the starting to talk about it a bit more, curious from your perspective, Seth, what did you take away from that little segment?
Yeah, it's always the hardest part that, as my experience as an MSP and when I kind of would look down my future as being an MSP is like everything I knew seemed to have an expiration date of about 12 months. It's hard. It's like you can be a carpenter, right? And it's like you build skills and processes, and this lasts the rest of your life. That's the way you cut that thing the rest of your life. But it does. It's like we were just dealing with dairy that sours awfully quick, right? And a lot of these things are like, right, what's profitable and productive, which is a killer business model after 3 years can really be a model that nobody wants anymore. So it is, it reminds me of just how much it requires us to continually reinvent ourselves.
It's tiring,
Yeah.
but it's necessary and it's not going to stop. We've all chosen to be in this industry because we actually enjoy that sort of challenge. We're naturally problem solvers, but what I'm finding is we're trying to solve the wrong problems. And this leads in very nicely to the sort of the next segment. We need to stop copy and pasting generic approaches. Again, we've gone through that commoditization. Like we're an immature industry. As a small business technologist, it's only been around for like 40 years at most. It all started from that whole sell the hardware, give away the labor for free. Then we started to realize that clients needed some software. Then they needed more services, and that evolution has continued. So we're 40 years at most, but for most of us, and especially in this MSP space, it's only been 20, 30 years at most. That's not a long time when especially when the goalpost has shifted a lot already. The challenge is that there's so many more dynamics going all at once. We've been so used to being overcoming one or two dynamics at a time, but we've got so many. We've, like, off the top of my head, we've probably got 12 going on at the moment. And it's very hard to juggle all of those. And that's where we're lacking a frame of reference. We all look at internally into our industry for the answers, but most people don't have the answers. Most people go to the forums, ask a bunch of questions. I'm not sure I want to copy people when the average EBITDA is 6%. That's not successful business models. The people that are doing well and changing are doing certain things, and they're not the ones that are sitting on the forums because they're busy doing business and looking after clients and growing. And so what we need to do is change our approach. What actually matters and what our frame of reference needs to be, first and foremost, is understanding our clients. Because again, different clients have different needs. The only right answer is knowing, starting with our identity and who our ICP is. And I'm going to give you, through this segment, some ways to view clients and create a frame of reference so you can start making decisions that's right for your business. Because what's right for your business isn't going to be right for the business next door. And so what I'm going to do is start with the segments that the clients are in. Now, I should probably have 5 in this because there's micro businesses inside the small business space. But the majority of us pretty much look after micro businesses, those 1 to 10 people organizations, small businesses that are that 11 to 49, and then the mid-market, which is those medium-sized businesses up to starting to get into the enterprise. And then you've got government. But most of us don't look after government and enterprise. The average partner is very much working with the average size client of like 10 to 20. Those are very different segments. And what I'm starting to see is partners are having a lot of challenges because they're trying to work with 3 different segments. The average partner is probably doing micro, small, and medium. Now, when you start looking at size, those micro businesses make very different decisions and have very different technology needs to a small business, let alone a medium-sized business. A medium-sized business is going to have a lot of different decision making than a small business, and when you start getting into that corporate mid-market, let alone enterprise. So my rule is we can work with 2, not 3. Simply because when you start breaking down based on the size, the decision making, the needs, it's very difficult for us as a company to market, to show and speak in the language appropriate for our clients. The way that we engage our clients through account management, VCIO, our support desks, etc. And the pricing and the value props are very different as well. So trying to do everything for everyone, just even based on size, it's very difficult. We work with 20 to 300 person companies. That's a very broad spectrum. And without clarity on that, we're again going very generic. So segments is a great place to start by just understanding some of those attributes by default. And then there's no right segment to work in. There's opportunities in every segment. There's different, and based on your skills and capabilities, you're going to have deeper penetration and a natural affinity to different things. From the segment, we need to start understanding what vertical they're in. Each different sort of vertical area that you're seeing on the screen has very different methods of generating revenue, how they operate, how they make spending decisions, how they budget, the types of people that work in these businesses, the personality. None of these are the same. Yet our MSPs, the average MSP, will be completely horizontal. It's very rare that you come across a verticalized MSP. And so what ends up happening is we don't we don't understand these verticals. We don't understand the companies by default. So we can only go so deep. And what that means is we become very generic. We need to work at the lowest common denominator. And when you start thinking about that, it's not just about our offerings, it's about our engagements. When you start thinking about how a professional services firm works, where most people are sitting behind a desk all day, a lot of them are billed by the hour, is very different to a hospitality company where no one's sitting behind a desk. They're all on the floor interacting with clients all the time. And the different levels of education, the different levels of interaction of how they work with their clients, they make money different way, they operate in a much different way. A professional services firm, a printer issue might be an inconvenience, whereas a hospitality company, if their kitchen printer isn't working, well, that's stopping them from making money. It's affecting their clients. They can lose business because of that. So how can our team understand the urgency of even just our incident resolution, let alone how can we bring value to those particular clients? And let's scratch a little deeper. What about the roles inside those businesses? If you look traditionally from our interactions from the past, most of us have a key contact at our client, and it's often an operational leader. It'll be a practice manager, it'll be an ops manager, it'll be uh, uh, those kinds of contacts that they run the day to day. It matters if their technology is up or not. They're the responsible ones for putting out the fires just so the business can operate. But times are changing. Technology isn't just about the infrastructure and keeping it up. More and more across the organization, they're leveraging technology in much different ways. How they generate their revenue, how they interact with their clients. Then you start putting on the risk side around cybersecurity. You start looking at the transformation their business models are going and who's driving that inside the businesses to create efficiency and enable scale and growth. These all have different personalities, they have different agendas, they have different goals that they're trying to achieve. And we're not thinking about them. We're defaulting back to that practice manager. And what you'll often see in how that's coming out at the moment is through cybersecurity is a great example. Most MSPs are defaulting to talking to our key contact about cybersecurity, trying to upsell them on why they should spend X amount per month to reduce their risks. Those ops managers don't care. That's just a cost. We've never been hit, so it doesn't matter to us. We'll solve that when we get to it. They've got tight budgets in what they're trying to run. They're trying to run efficiencies. We're coming with an intangible risk where a board really cares about that kind of risk, and especially in certain parts of the world, those board of directors actually have legislation and liability against them personally. So they really care about that conversation, but they probably don't care about whether the lights are on in the server room and it falls over for 10 minutes. They don't really care because it's a different perspective. And that's where all of us are failing because we're not breaking this down to this level. We're not understanding the client's business because we're horizontal. We're generic. We fall back to when there's a problem, we'll fix it and we'll provide a standardized stack. And that's where it starts to break down as well, because most of these people don't care about infrastructure. All of a sudden, what they're purchasing, what they're looking at from a technology perspective, is very different to our traditional values. And this is further exacerbated when you go even one further down. You think about these roles, you start thinking about the demographics that are in them. And it, what I'll call out is think about how we all founded and started. That local guy, Johnny on the spot, most of the business owners are baby boomers. They have a specific way of buying, a mentality around loyalty and trust. The way that they interact with people is very well ingrained. But those business owners are exiting. They're selling off their businesses, and the leaders under them are very different generations. You know, a lot of the CEOs now are Gen Xers, very shrewd, very cynical type people. They expect certain things in a certain way, but they're fairly similar to baby boomers with their purchasing behavior. But you start opening up to millennials, which are the majority of the workforce at the moment. More and more, they're the leaders, the frontline leaders, the operational leaders. How they make purchasing decisions and what they expect are very different to the previous generations, let alone as we're starting to get a lot more Gen Z into the space. And this is where we're starting to see more and more friction about what we're offering. The value prop, if I'm a millennial business owner, a traditional MSP, there's no value prop to me because I'm looking at things very differently, let alone when we start getting into the Gen Z. And then you see that throughout the way that as we start to interact with our support and our account management, those expectations are very different. And we'll talk about it a bit more further on. But I can't undersell how important this demographic shift actually is. And it's something not enough partners are really thinking about. But we'll take a step back quickly. At the end of the day, most of our clients are having these challenges. Most of us aren't thinking about these challenges for our clients. We're thinking about technology. We default to the tech. What's their infrastructure? Do we need to replace the desktops to get to Windows 11? Is that really the biggest problem that they're facing? Probably not. And us not understanding our clients and their demographics means we can only default to the tech because we don't understand their businesses. We're defaulting to the generic thought process. And if I really boil it down, what clients care about are these three areas. How can they grow and scale? How can they increase efficiencies and drive profit? And how can they reduce the risk of impacting revenue or profit? None of us think like this. We all think about the tech risk, not how it ties into the business. And I want you to think about that and let that sink in for a second. I'll take a breath. What's going through your head, Seth?
Well, go back to that generation slide real quick. I love that I'm still on the left-hand side of this slide. I'm for these next 2 years, I'm gonna really enjoy being on the left-hand side of a demographic slide. But it really is, it's considering your audience, right? Like this is actually, it really resonates with just kind of experience that I had recently. At our own business, working with a technology solutions partner. We do SOC 2, Type 2 compliance and stuff like that, offloading some stuff. And, immediately what happened, and this goes back to your slide about, the type of business that you're talking to. They just started calling me about everything on onboarding, everything. They were just calling me like 5 times a day, right? I looked at the month of January, I had 61 phone calls from them. All other vendors, all other people that I work with had called me one time on my landline. Like, right, like my landline doesn't get used at a SaaS business, right? We set up meetings, right? Like, and not to plug TimeZest, right? But like that's very much like we all use TimeZest or a Calendly or something like that. If you want someone's time, you set up some time, and then that's how you meet. calling is like an assault, right? And very much like on this generational slide, it's like things change, right? Like we were talking about, things change over time. That stuff starts to expire. Like when I was a kid, right? I could just go stop at somebody's house. I could go like knock on my friend's door, or people would come over to the house, right? Just during dinner, and we just have a conversation with them and leave, right? And you do that to a millennial or a Gen Z person, that's like assault. They're gonna be like, why on earth are you here? Why did you? Oh, probably Gen X even. It's probably fair to say about that. The two is certain practices go by the wayside. Certain practices that are totally acceptable and normal get to be weird and off-putting in a hurry, at least in my experience. And just in terms of what I would actually just kind of distill that in terms of like actionable insight, ask. Ask your clients at the outset, like right, like vertical specialization stuff like that will help, right? Because you'll just know, hey, everybody that works at a
Yeah.
factory tends to want to, operate in this way, right? But be sure to ask, especially your main point of contact. Like, how do you want us to reach out to you, in a primary means? It can go a long way to just seeming like you know them and you know how to operate in their space. Of those verticals you showed me, there's like 5 or 6 different distinct communication styles that they'll want to pursue. And that's important to know from the outset.
What a foreign concept, talking to your clients.
Yeah.
And
See what they want to
that
do, right? Instead of telling them all the stuff that you want them to do.
and that's what we've lost. If we slide into the next sort of segment, we default to asking other people in the industry. How would they know? Like have worked with a lot of partners. I've interacted with hundreds, thousands of partners. I understand their operations. Whenever someone asks about what approach should I take, I don't know. I need to ask a bunch of questions first. Who are your clients? What segments are they? Blah, 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 before I can give you any sort of semblance of a start of providing some advice. And it all comes down to we're not talking to our clients. And what we've discussed so far is how much has changed and how much is changing. We need to start getting a lot more engagement with our clients and understanding them. They need us to improve. They need us to transform and change, because if we don't, they're going to go somewhere else. And I'm seeing that churn really ramp up because of that. And I'm going to give everyone some thought process around what's going on and what's changing. But what's important here is there's no right answer again. You need to be thinking about what I'm saying in this segment. Think about the segment before. Who's your clients? What segment are they? What demographics? What matters to them? Because I can't tell you the right answer, but I want you to think about and contrast to where we started. Think about that slide that I showed when we jumped up. It's quite a simple infrastructure base. Things have expanded and changed significantly around the average client business. Back when we started, it was all based on a site and the on-premise infrastructure. These days, for a lot of businesses, it's worked from anywhere. All of a sudden, we've got a lot more different technology areas. Our client environments have gotten complex. A lot of the technology is a lot simpler and just works. So the value prop has changed. We're not that white knight diving in to solve the server that's fallen over on site. We're having to worry about someone that's traveled overseas and how do we secure them so they're not a risk to the client environment? How do we make it easy for the users to log in and have an identity? How do we ensure that they've got always on comms when they're everywhere? There's a lot of different thought processes there. And what's important is a lot of it's application based nowadays rather than infrastructure, especially in that micro, small, medium-sized business. Basically, nothing's on-prem. And we've always avoided the application layer. But when you start to step back and understand the 12 major solution categories that I've got up on the screen, our broadness of technology that we need to be across is huge. And when I say across, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to deliver everything, but the client needs our help and understanding. Where in the past, we've always said, if they're looking at applications, we don't know enough about their industry or their business to give them any advice. So we're like, oh, just tell us what infrastructure you need and we'll put it in for you. But we will be hands off. We won't support that, but you can ring us and we'll talk to the vendor for you and lodge a ticket, and then they'll contact you and we'll get out of the way. We've avoided that and we continue to avoid it, but we also are throwing a lot more roadblocks up. Our default answer is no, but clients want us to say yes, but, and that's a big mindset shift. What that means is we need to evolve from that proactive maintenance thought process that we are looking at before, that standardized stack approach. It made sense 10 years ago that we needed to standardize because client environments needed to be standardized so that they didn't fall over. But as infrastructure has disappeared from on site and we start to become a lot more applications based, what clients are looking for and needing us to do is provide advice. They need us to enable them to leverage their technology, and they need us to govern it. But we can't govern stuff that we don't understand. We're not worried about what applications they're using. How can we govern it? So that mindset is really going to have to change. And with that, our business models are going to have to change as well. Now, Seth mentioned that I talk about the technology solutions partner. I don't care what you end up calling yourself. I don't care how you structure your business. But the traditional model that we've spoken about, the MSP, is commoditizing. The value prop is disappearing. We need to transform our approach. And that means not just mindset, that actually means changing our business model and our operating models. There's a lot we're going to have to change. We're going to have to think about what our clients need and who we're targeting. Again, client centricity. It's not a generic thing. The more that you understand, the more that you can differentiate yourself. If you're going into those verticals and saying, we do it this way, this is the value props that we're giving, you're going to cut through a lot of the noise, because all the average MSP can do is go, we provide managed services. We provide a help desk. We use these tools. There's no differentiator because there is none. It's a generic model. And so this is the opportunity to really stand out. This is why we're not getting leads. And when we think about that technology changing, we've got to think about, how can we create a whole solution portfolio? There's an end-to-end client journey here. We've traditionally been we will engage with someone, we will procure some hardware or software, we'll implement it for someone, and then we'll manage it through our recurring services. But clients need more than that. There's a whole client journey on every particular technology solution categories, and then there's solutions inside it. We need to start thinking about these other areas. How do we provide advice and guidance? How can we architect and chart a solution and take clients through that so they can make decisions and get the right outcomes? And how can we enable the end users? There's so much more opportunity to generate revenue and profit by actually taking clients through that journey. Things aren't as simple as they used to be. We used to be able to just go, you've got a network, we need to uplift it from 100 meg to a gigabit network. Done. Like that was that's what we did. It was lift and shift type projects. Well, that still is sort of out there. That infrastructure projects are disappearing. What's happening is there's a lot more micro projects. There's a lot more different engagements because client environments are different. How they need to leverage technology is very different. And so we need to start thinking about how we provide that in a much different way and be able to articulate it to our clients. And so that approach, we need to start thinking advisory-led. How do we understand our clients first? Because we can't bring them the right solution. What is needed for one client at one time isn't necessarily what our second client needs. This doesn't mean we can't create some standardized, productized solutions. What this means is we need to change from a standardized stack approach. It's not just here, buy my managed service and you get this, this, and this. Most clients are not going to buy that anymore. We're already seeing that. They're looking for, I need this thing. I might need support to solve this issue. I might need governance to do this. I might need this at this time. And then a year later, they might need this and they might need that. It's a portfolio approach. And this is why a lot of us are failing. This is why a lot of sales teams aren't growing, because we're missing the mark. Our products and value props aren't meeting the needs of the modern client. But we're not going to be able to meet the needs of the modern client if we don't understand them. And the clients don't understand what they need. They don't understand what the right solutions are. They need our help and guidance. And that's a very, very different engagement and thought process inside our organizations. And as we start to look at changing our business as well, it's changing our structures. We've been very focused on our service desks, our help desks, because our value prop was we could respond really fast to your broken issues. But when you start looking at the technology and what we're needing and our profitability, we haven't implemented the scalable approaches because we've never invested in the right resources. We keep hiring people that fix broken things instead of solving the large problems. We haven't invested in that automation. We haven't invested in proper technical standards, let alone as we start expanding and needing to start looking at different ways of how we're delivering projects. Projects aren't just that lift and shift. More and more projects are getting smaller, and there should be more volume of smaller projects. But also, most technical projects are actually transforming organizations. They're actually changing how the user works. When we upgraded a network in the past, it didn't really affect them. It just made things better. Now, if we change an application or we move our files from on-prem into a proper SharePoint site, not just treating it like a file repository, how they work, how the end users work and their workflow are changing. And so there's all these different dynamics. And so we need to start thinking about our internal structure. Again, there's no one single right answer, but understanding this high-level concept can start to help you frame that. But there's another thing that you really need to start changing the mindset on as well. Think about those 12 solution categories. They're super deep. There's lots of different specialities in there. How we deliver those solutions to our clients can vary. And how we grow and what we focus on will vary based on our clients. But traditionally, we've always looked at how we create delivery capacities. We'll just build it. We'll build it internally. We'll just work it out. We'll grow it. But we can't keep doing that mindset. For one, there's too much to be across. Not everyone can be everything. But it's unlikely, even if we start getting, say, an Azure engineer and someone in Dynamics, it's one person. They can only go so far. And there's so much risk in that. There's so much cost in that. We need to start thinking about this differently. We've got more options than we thought we do. We can acquire businesses. If we see there's so much volume in a certain thing, rather than trying to build it, why don't we just look for the people that can already do it? That can be quite difficult for a lot of organizations. There's probably not enough specialists to acquire, but there are options and it's worked for partners in the past. But more and more, there's so much opportunity to partner. Rather than getting in the way of each other, we're going to make more money together by someone owning the client relationship and bringing a specialist in to deliver value to our clients. And this is very foreign to most MSP owners. We've always just gone, we need to control everything. Don't let anyone else in. But that mindset is, again, putting clients off. They don't care anymore. They don't trust that. That approach of control is a demographic shift as well. Baby boomers wanted us to control everything. That's what they needed from us. Millennials have been brought up with collaboration. So if you're trying to sandbag everything, that's going to throw red flags to a millennial to say, why don't you want to collaborate? This is what we want to do. And this is what I'm seeing is pushing a lot of partners out because that decision maker is seeing things completely different and haven't understood what the client actually wants. And so we need to start thinking about the layers of our industry a lot more and seeing where we fit. The client is our center of the world. We need to start remembering that. It's not us, it's the client. We we need to wrap around it. And as we've been talking about, we need to provide them advice. We need to elevate to that advisor. Then we need to bring that partner ecosystem in with the deep speciality to provide them value. We need to partner properly with distributors and vendors to filter into the right solutions to our clients. It's a very different thought process to the MSP centric world that we've turned into of how do we run our business as best we can to be as standardized and generic as possible. It's not aligning with what clients want and need. I don't think I can say that enough. And so we need to start thinking about what our value pillars are. This is what modern clients really need from us. They need advice about how to leverage technology for their business and solve problems, open up opportunities. Their people need to be enabled to leverage that technology. They need us to govern the technology, and they need transparent information to make their business decisions. It's not the old days where the baby boomers didn't understand anything about technology and just needed someone that they could trust to make the right decisions. The world's become more savvy. We understand technology and how our business uses it. But we need more transparency of that information so we can make decisions. So, Seth, before I keep moving on and flying through, what do you reckon?
Yeah, this really reminds me of a strange moment in my career that I went from actually leading an advertising agency to helping lead an MSP. And it was there's a lot of similarities, believe it or not, between the two things. I mean, you're really trying to do roughly the same things for clients, and kind of seeking similar outcomes. And what I was always struck by was how static MSPs would be in their sort of specializations. They say, well, we know this, right? We have, and when I got started, right, we have a golden image, right? And we're gonna kind of stick to that. And that mindset didn't really change, right? It was like, how can we find clients that will fit into what we're doing rather than how can we figure out how to help our clients better? An old mentor of mine would always say is like, you got to involve yourself with your client's complexity to provide value, right? If all you're doing is trying to prove to your client month after month, year after year, that you're just proving a negative that they didn't get, infiltrated by some kind of bad actor, they're gonna scratch their head and go, well, what did they actually do for us, right? And that's hard, right? You can't become a specialist in every, line of business application and that's out there in the whole world. But I will say this is one thing that I did bring from the agency world that worked really well was how we did that in the agency world, right? Like we had the same problem, right? You want to work with a bunch of different types of businesses, but you only got, so many heads in the in the building that can fulfill that work. So how we would work is we wouldn't work with a client until we would do a big project for them. We had these kind of foundational things. We're going to do your website, right? We're going to do an ad campaign for you. We're going to do a TV commercial, something that would make us understand them in order to do the work, right? It would make a couple people a specialist in the things they did. Man, I tell you what, I did SEO for a long time. I know way more about, you know, robotic surgery for prostatectomy and hysterectomy than I ever wanted to know. I know what a a yard mule is and shipping logistics. I know, like, I have all these like weirdly niche specialized bits of knowledge in my head that I don't know if I'll ever actually use, but they were really useful in my clients' relationships. And we had this one copywriter at the MSP, or at our agency. She did stuff specifically for lawyers, and people would ask her lawyer like legal advice, and she always remind people like, I just write stuff and pretend like I know what I'm talking about, guys. But sometimes it does take that, right? It doesn't hurt to learn a little bit. Another mentor of mine says, adults can study too, right? Like you can learn new tricks, and it doesn't mean, hey, restructure your whole business for every type of new client you get, right? But if you're not involved yourself with their complexity, if you're not having to learn something new to take that client on, the chances you're providing them real value that they're going to recognize gets to be very slim.
It's so true. What you just said there around the golden image and trying to force everyone into fitting into our golden image. That's a commodity.
Mm.
That's I always reflect back when I talk to partners about this is electricity companies. What do they really compete on? Price. They don't. They're generic. They provide clear commoditized services. That's it. You don't get an account manager, you don't get engagement. You you will chop and change when needed, and it doesn't affect you. They don't understand your business. So, that's the race that a lot of MSPs are going to because of that generic approach and that golden image approach. And so, what we need to start doing is, like what you just said, what you described is we need to start from a top-down approach rather than trying to work bottom up. We always build bottom up as an MSP because we're focused on that tactical operations, keeping the lights on type mentality. And so I want to shift that quickly. I'm going to smash you guys with a bunch of information. I want you to think about our margins. As we're thinking about this, take a client-centric approach. I'm going to describe our businesses and how we operate and how we need to change. This is what we need to understand from a client's perspective. Our core business drivers are these four areas. This is how we make our money. And there's a big difference between what the high performers do and the industry average. And a lot of the difference is their focuses, their strategic approach, their disciplines, their maturity, the focus on financial analysis. We all do the same things. So why can one business run at 50% managed services gross margin while the industry average is 38? There's very different ways that they're operating and what they're focused on. So the more that we understand what the best practices are, and this is what I've made a living of for the last 8 years, I can come in and understand why are we running at average. Here's some steps that we can take. Here's some technology we can leverage. This is what the guys that are doing the high performing are doing. Let's go on a transformation journey. If I didn't know all of that information, what value am I bringing? I could be that generic. Let's set up our tool without the understanding of what we can do to actually transform to hit those higher margins. Very different value props. And that only comes from deep understanding. There's years of sitting there and learning this stuff. This is how I can boil that knowledge down into some key levers and some key focuses. Think about your clients. If you're generic and horizontal, how can you understand this stuff? Like you just said, Seth, it's like once you start understanding the language and how they make how they're making their money, all of a sudden you can start tailoring your solution portfolio to start identifying their problems and likely challenges, likely opportunities to start bringing them solutions that are going to unlock it. People will pay a lot of money if you can help them make more money. And that's the thing that a lot of us don't realize from an MSP perspective is we've been worried about that technical risk. Clients don't actually care about that. Clients care about how are they going to generate revenue, how are they going to generate profit. If you tap into those and provide solutions for those, all of a sudden the margins that I showed you before are even higher because there's easy business ROI. It becomes so obvious to the clients that they don't care. It's a different conversation. And so this is where we need to go back to think about our clients and apply this to ourselves. Where is our starting point? What maturity level are they operating at? Are we working with companies that are starting up that don't understand a whole lot and they need that foundational sort of technology? And if we bring the right solutions, we can fast track their growth. Are they developing where a lot of MSPs are? They've got a bit of documentation, they've got a bit of measurements. How do we help them go from that stage 2 to stage 3 maturity? How does that help their growth? How does that help their profitability? Using this sort of framework thinking, we can then create client journeys. And that's where we can start thinking about then, how do we create solutions? So I'm going to quickly take you through a thought process. Most of us can't productize a solution. Like if we go back to our managed services, we saw how much we were charging, we put a contingency of 20% on, done. That was our managed services packaging. And then since then, all we do is jump on the forums and go, what's in your stack? How much are you charging? And then we'll copy and paste. This is how we've ended up where we are. Again, I'm not going to copy someone else that's running at 6% EBITDA. Think about that. And so there's a structured methodology on how to productize this. I'm going to go through this quite quickly in terms of thinking about just end user support. When we think about end user support and how we operate, there's 5 key categories of sort of tickets that come in. There's an incident, something's broken, we need to fix it. Problem, something keeps breaking. How do we resolve that forever so it doesn't happen again? Service request with a client requesting something that they should have that's already existing, a change request for something new or major changes, or they need to know something, an information request. How we deliver them are very different. How we respond to them are very different. How we staff them are very different. We don't think about breaking it down to that sort of level. Again, you can start applying this to your clients. What are their key processes that they need to follow in their business? What technology do they use? What happens if that doesn't work? How does that impact the business? You can take that a step further. The different methods of communication. So we get those things in. How do they submit that? How do they lodge it? Then how do we interact with them? When we start thinking about the demographics of our clients and what they do, like what you said, Seth, millennials hate phone calls. It's not planned. We want to be booked in. I don't even want to jump on the phone personally. I'd rather chat or do a video call. I hate email. But that's my preferences. You might have different, Seth. The next person will have different. We need to start to understand that client experience and break it down. Then you start thinking about hours of operations. So what do our clients need? When do they generate their money? How long do they generate their money across work hours? We all default to generic. We need to provide business hour support only, and the clients need to fit that. But then we've got these random clients, but we've never properly set up a structure for them to be supported properly. So let's just default to saying we provide 24/7. We need to think about this properly and more deeply. Again, if we understand our clients, we can tailor what we're delivering and how we're delivering it and when we deliver it based on them. Then how do we resource this? Again, our clients have these challenges. Do we need someone onshore that can go to site, have a direct engagement? Do we leverage someone that's offshore that's cheaper that can still provide the quality? Do we outsource this so that we've got a clear outcomes and deliverables? Do we leverage technology to deliver it? Then we can start looking at how we lift those practices, how we create better efficiencies. It can be very complex. I know I've just raced through it really quickly, but again, there's no right answers. I can't dive in deeply because I don't understand your business. I can only give you a really high level, surface level awareness. It's only till I understand you that I can go deep and help you with the right solutions. And so we've been flying through, and we'll start wrapping up, and we'll get some final thoughts from Seth. But what I want you to do from today is take this information, set yourself some goals, identify the gaps between where you're heading and what you need to do, then create a plan of that change and transformation. Share that plan inside your team. Then start working it and review it. It's as simple as that, one step at a time. You don't need to go from a traditional MSP to a modern TSP like that. One step at a time. And if you're looking and lost where to start, talk to your clients. That should be your first thing, more than anything. So, Seth, I've been rambling for an hour. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, just on the last section that you were talking about, it reminded me of, a little bit of being on the vendor side of the MSP space, right? And it was a lunch and learn at an Evolve conference, right? And this guy is like a sales guy, right? Really didn't know the space. He's giving this presentation, and someone raised their hand and asked, and he's like, "Hey, you guys SOC 2 compliant?" Just like a basic question about their tool. And he goes, "Yeah, we have a SOC." Thinking that he was, completely missed the term. And everything he said after that, no one listened to a single word, right? Because like he clearly wasn't a native. So think about that with your clients, right? How credible are you when you make those kind of missteps, right? How credible are you if you're not talking like they're talking, right? It's just basic social matching. But you know, all this is excellent, right? And very much recommend, if you are looking to work on something like this, coaches are super helpful, right? Um, hey, I'll just give some real talk to small business owners, right? Sometimes it can be hard to take advice, right? You kind of get into a mode where you're not taking advice from people. You can figure it out. You figured out the past 10 years, of course you can figure out the next 10 years. Don't make it hard on yourself. Get a coach. Get somebody that can have an overhead view of a lot of different businesses. It was the same sort of value you provide as an MSP. It's the same sort of value I used to provide as an ad agency. I could see into a lot of different businesses and help businesses in that way. And when you're only, in one business, you only see one business. So very much recommend this stuff. Also check out, his like LinkedIn pages, stuff like that. He's a big sharer of information on a regular basis. I consume a lot of this stuff, and I really recommend, check out those channels as well.
There's some great advice, Seth. And the last thing I'll say before we wrap up, if you're listening to this and you're like, I've been doing this for 20 years, I don't have the energy to transform, I can't see how I'm going to do it. Plan your exit and get out in the next period. It's the best time to sell. There's more buyers and sellers. Go out on top, because if you don't transform, you're going to start going into a spiral. And I'm not saying that to seed fear. It's the reality. I'm seeing more churn than ever, and the stagnation and staticness of the industry as a whole is huge. So if you're not going to grow unless you transform, you're not going to be in the same position if you don't transform. So exit, cash out. It's going to be plenty of work, plenty of different things. You can always start again, but don't sit there and hope for the best, because if you don't do anything, it's not going to be a good outcome.
Very true. Well, listen, we're going to have a recording of this if you want to share with colleagues or anything like that. Actually, it's going to be tomorrow. It's like 7 p.m. here on the East Coast of the U.S. So won't quite get that up until tomorrow. But look forward to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TimeZest. And James, very much appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me, Seth. This has been great.
Same here. Everybody have a good evening/morning. Bye, everybody.